Alright, here we are in the Napoleonic Wars. I still haven't moved anywhere. But I think I've got a handle on the rules. And that's going to be a biggie. But to show the point I have, and I think that the rules are actually pretty complete. There may still be a couple things that I'm not certain of. But to give you an idea, this is a car alarm. A game in which the complexity doesn't feel that much heavier than Axis and Allies. It really doesn't. There are a few little things in it, but I think I've seen games with this level of complexity handled in maybe the 8 pages of rules they were aiming for, certainly 12. They come in at 24. And I'll show you one of the reasons why. Here's the glossary. 1, 2, almost 3 full pages of terms. Okay? There's a certain level of completeness about that. Most games that have a glossary have maybe a column. They may leave a couple things out. This is pretty damn complete. Most of it is also pretty damn self-explanatory. Things like hand. But it's kind of important because each nation has their own hand. So I can understand why they want it to be very specific with these. The unfortunate thing is there are a couple of these that are really, really not very intuitive. And I didn't really get the rules. And maybe I haven't yet, but I think I've got a grasp on them now. I didn't get the rules until after I read the glossary item by item and looked up all its cross-references to see just what the effects were. I don't usually have to do that. Now maybe I'm getting old, or maybe I didn't pay much attention the first time through, and those are very strong possibilities. But usually I'm used to reading through a rule book and having a pretty good idea of what's happening. I didn't have that the first time through. I think I have that after looking through the glossary and carefully cross-referencing everything, which took about the same as a very light reading. Anyway, just to give you a heads up on the rule book, it's not that bad. I think counted as maybe twice the effort you would expect for a 24-page rule book. Okay, let's try this again. For the first action of the game, the French have decided to move in and engage the English. And what they did was they spent one of their reserves, which is kind of like a card in their hand, but it's on their player aid card, and they mark that by removing the flag. There's a flag over here on the Imperial Guard. There's not one here because they spent that. And they moved their fleet from down here on the South Atlantic Ocean. It costs 2 per because they've got Spanish ships with them. It's a multinational fleet. So 2, 4, 6 into the English Channel. Now they want to intercept that fleet. Now one of the things is they've got a plus card, so they can play another card. So they did that, and they're playing a 4-point card to give them 4 actions. That'll allow Napoleon to come crossing over the channel and attack the English. And in addition, they have the weather gauge, which allows them to automatically intercept. I think this is a free intercept. It doesn't count against those 4 points. They're blowing a lot of cards for this. They also get an advantage in the battle. I'll roll that out immediately, and we'll see what happens. So after the French clear the channel, Napoleon marches across. He had a 4-point card he played. 1 point into Kent, 1 point into London, a 3rd point to flag London. And as far as I can see, there's no reason to flag Kent at this point. And while he did this, the English troops withdrew from Kent and from London and have gathered together under Moore. Chances are there just aren't enough to handle him, but... So there's kind of a, okay, now what? The French have to hunt down those English troops at some moment in order to capture the rest of these keys in England. Otherwise, they're going to lose London. So they're going to have to start slogging after them. And as long as the English are kind of loose, it may be difficult to force an English surrender. But the fourth point instead was spent to move Messina out of Milan and down to Romagna. And I guess the goal there was to save the unit in Romagna and also to threaten Naples. The French want to capture a bunch of keys to make a surrender more likely. What this means, of course, is that the Austrians and the Russians are kind of free to position themselves to attack the French. And we're going to see how that plays out. Okay, I screwed up. No big shock. Looking over the rules, I thought I remembered this. Fleet maneuvers only cost a half a command point each instead of a full command point. So the 6 command points that I used to sail up into the channel should have only been 3. Which means the 3 I used in England is that card. So I think I'm going to jump another card to move more. I'm going to use that other card and move more units in Europe. Let me see what I do. So I rectified the French point problem by moving their fleet afterwards over into Rotterdam, just to protect it. That'll allow them, once Britain surrenders, if they surrender, to have a fleet still, because otherwise the British would have been able to destroy it. And what else? I think there was only the 1 point left. They got their card back out of those 6. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. Okay. I believe 4, 5, 6. I don't know. No, they had to play the card because they moved some of their other troops around to challenge the Austrians and to kind of position themselves better. So what did the British do? The British played their parliament power, or reserve, which allowed Austria to draw a card. And they got 1 CP, which they spent on helping to entice the Turks. They want to get the Turks out of the neutral box so that they don't cause problems for the Austrians and Russians. And then, or the Brits for that matter. We had the Austrian turn. They played a big card, 5 points. They spent all of them. They reorganized some of their troops around Vienna, reinforcing Ferdinand. He's got more troops than he can command there. But the idea is he's going to be able to defend Vienna a little better this way. They also moved Charles down to attack here at Romagna. And perhaps silly, but the attack wouldn't have happened otherwise. They played a card to allow themselves to get an attack and actually almost got a major victory out of it, flipping Messina and pushed him into Tuscany. And didn't do much. They also flagged Romagna to give them a little better defensive position there in case an attack comes back that way. Alright, so I finished the first round of impulses. I think we had finished with the Austrians. The Russians moved forward. Prussia built up some additional troops. Who else? And then I think everything except Spain were neutral proxies. They all built forces. This is kind of an interesting part of the game. You draw a card off the pile that country holds, and whatever strength it has on it is spent on building forces. And there's a set of rules on how those forces are going to be expended. If the card can't completely pay for the forces, it's possible to turn in other forces to build bigger things. So for example, in Denmark's case, They had no leader there. They only had a 2-point card, so they turned in one of their units. Gives them 4 points, enough to build a leader. They end up with the same total number of dice in combat, if they ever fight with that. But now they have a leader, so now they can build more troops. Another thing is, if you end up with an odd number, as Turkey did, and you can't keep building because you have this one extra command point, or whatever it's called, it's put on your card to indicate, oh hey, if you're still neutral the next time you get an impulse, you get an extra point left over. And anything more than 1 point can be used. 1 point, there's really no use for. So now we're going to go through the sequence again of countries. France will be going first. We follow the normal sequence there. There's the possibility of a preemption, but only the player with the most cards can do that. And right now both France and Britain have 4 cards. So there can't be a preemption, and there probably won't be, well, we'll see how things play out, but there probably won't be a chance of one on this impulse round, assuming everybody just plays a card, which may not happen because people have, these off, their reserves that they can use instead. Oh, I forgot to say what Spain did. Okay, but anyway, going back to the preemption, if France plays a card, then Britain would have the preemption ability, but they go next. So if they play a card, the preemption ability goes. And I believe, I'm not positive about this, but you can't have a double impulse. So you can never preempt somebody who's just going after you. I think that's how it works. I have to look that up. But on Spain. Spain, unlike the other neutrals, well, the other proxies, is actually a packed proxy of France. That means France gets to play their cards. They get to look at them, and they get to pick what they want to do. And in this case, they played a 2-point card, marched into Lisbon, fought a quick battle, and then fought a siege and won. So, Spain now has an additional key over where they were, and Britain's back another one. That will make it easier for Britain to surrender. This guy's no longer ill, Messina. Speaking of someone threatening English keys, he's on his way down to Naples, it looks like. So the French goal right now is grab as many British keys as they can, because that'll make the surrender easier. That'll knock Britain out for the next turn. They'll be stuck as a subject neutral and unable to join the coalition. This is especially important for Britain because Britain cannot join the imperial side, so you can't try to sway them in any way. Although it's very clear at this point in the game that Britain's probably going to fall. Not absolutely guaranteed, but that the other major players, certainly Austria and Russia, who are already part of the coalition, but probably Prussia as well, are going to want to move against France. And the fact that Britain got invaded is kind of a respite for the Austrians. Alright, I'm going to actually wrap this one up and post it because it's long enough. I know we're not even through the first turn yet, but there's only 5 turns, so... And I think we'll be going through the rest of them much more rapidly than this one. I just wanted to give a feel of the play as I'm first seeing it, because I think that's helpful to people.